My name's John. Today I'm going to be talking about what I think it takes to become a software engineer, AI engineer, data scientist, data engineer, adjacent roles in 2026 and in this job market. I've been an AI engineer for about 3 years now. I've been programming for more like 6 or 7. A lot of this is basically just aimed at advice that I wish someone had given me when I was starting my job search, when I was learning to code. I'm going to start this video off like you're going from zero to hero, like you don't know how to code. This is just something that you want to do. If that doesn't apply to you, I did my best to label the like scrubbing bar at the bottom so you can kind of move around to what applies to you more. But in general, I think the main themes are going to apply kind of to everybody. So this is hopefully good information for you, even if you are a bit more seasoned. I'm going to talk about, I think, 6 aspects that are important for becoming a software engineer or AI engineer or whatever it is that you want to be. The first is going to be learning to code, or just more so like learning whatever it is, the domain that you want to make your profession. So if it's software engineering, if it's AI engineering, if it's data engineering, CI/CD, pipelines, DevOps, this is where we all start. It's the learning part. The second part is building a project. This is going to basically sub in as your work experience. So you're learning and then you're building. The next thing we're going to talk about is building a resume. This is to showcase what you've learned and what you've built. The fourth thing we're going to talk about is the searching for jobs part. So now that you have your resume, you have your projects, and you feel pretty good about what you know, you're going to start putting yourself out there and searching. Next thing we're going to talk about is the interviewing. So you've searched for a while, you've gotten some bites on your your resume. The interview is how you're going to bring it home. And then last but not least, this is what I think goes into succeeding in the role. So a lot of this is just my personal opinion. None of it is gospel. It's just kind of what I've gathered through the years of being a programmer, being on both sides of the interview table, spending a lot of time doing things that were unproductive for my career, resume optimizing, trying to build a ton of projects, trying to learn everything under the sun, different interviewing techniques, trying to optimize my job search. I failed in a lot of ways, and I'm hoping to save you from a lot of those hiccups in this video. So let's kick it off with the learning part. So with learning, there's basically 3 avenues that people take. The most common one, and kind of the most obvious, is to go get a degree in your profession. So in this case, I'm talking about comp sci. So you can go to college, you can go to a 4-year university and get a degree in computer science. The second option is to do a boot camp. So boot camps are basically accelerated programs where you're just doing computer science, you're just doing like your data engineering, your AI engineering. It's just tailored towards your skills that you need to know to get the job, and they have like job search resources as well. And then a boot camp is more like 4 months, where a computer science degree obviously is more like 4 years. This is also probably the cheaper option. And then the third choice is being self-taught. So you can teach yourself all this stuff. You don't need the university or the boot camp program. You can learn it all on your own, especially nowadays where all this information is widely available on the internet for free. So my opinion on these things is a little hard to articulate because I essentially did all 3 of these things. I got my education in economics. I went to a 4-year university, got a bachelor's in economics. But towards the end of my degree, I kind of started to see that I was going to maybe want to go more into the quantitative side of things. And so I took a couple programming classes in econometrics. You do some R and a little bit of data science in there as well. So I came out of college with a reasonable understanding of programming, or at least what it was, and a little bit about basic like data types and stuff. And then for about 2 years after college, I was self-taught, going through waves of learning and then not learning and learning and not learning, because I was bartending at the time, wasn't really sure what I wanted to do post-college yet. And when I decided to really lock in that I wanted to be a programmer, I went for the boot camp option. I did a 6-month or maybe 8-month program. It was at a college near where I live, is the University of California, San Diego, but it was a little different because it was an asynchronous program. They basically just gathered a bunch of learning materials, put it on a website, and then I paid for access to that and worked through the modules on my own time. There wasn't really any instruction. Most boot camps kind of sell you on the high quality instruction that's going to be coming through their professors or whoever is attached to the program. So I kind of checked all 3 of these boxes. I did my 4-year degree, I did an accelerated program, and I was very self-taught as well. So if I could do all this over again, I'm going to say, related to a computer science degree, I still think this is perfectly valid in 2026. I think a lot of people are scared about AI. They're scared about intro-level software engineering jobs going away. I still think a computer science degree is a worthwhile use of your time. And the reason for that is because it's a STEM degree. I always try to push people towards STEM degrees anyway, and you're going to forget 90% of what you learned in college anyway. Like, if I had to take a test right now on microeconomics, like, I would get a literal 0%. And I think that applies to pretty much everyone. You're going to school to learn how to show up on time, how to learn hard subjects, and to figure out what you want to do with your life. I think if you go to a 4-year university, you study computer science, that's a STEM degree, you're going to learn a ton of theory about computers, and you're going to learn some computer engineering, you're going to learn a lot about different programming languages, you're going to have to take a lot of math, some physics even, and you're going to come out of it much brighter, and it signals to potential employers, even if you don't end up becoming a programmer, it signals to potential employers like, hey, I know how to show up, I know how to study for hard things, I know how to learn quickly, and it just signals that you're going to have a successful career. I think one of the reasons I chose economics was just because I wanted to know how the world works, and I felt like that was a good way to do that, because definitely at that time I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. But you might be thinking, hey man, that's a pretty expensive, let's go find myself. You're looking at like $100K a lot of times with a CS degree. I mean, if you're lucky, you can go to in-state, do the computers or the community college option if it's available to you. There's a lot of ways to cut costs if you do want to get a 4-year degree in computer science, but it might not be for you, or maybe you already have a 4-year degree and you're looking at this like, I'm not going back to school to learn computer science. That's totally fine too. I barely think anybody I work with has a computer science degree. A lot of times, because this information is just out there now, people study something else and then pivot into programming. So if you want to do the boot camp option, which is the next option, you're probably looking at about $20K. And the thing with boot camps is they're not really like, I don't want to say like regulated, but there's a good chance you could end up feeling pretty scammed at the end of it, is what I'll say. There's a lot of like sweeping promises about what you're going to get out of a boot camp. There's a lot of like information that they're promising you're going to comprehend by the end of it. Job placement promises. So I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with doing a boot camp, but it's really expensive for how short it is. And there's a pretty high likelihood you're going to feel pretty scammed afterwards, or outright just like kind of get scammed. So know that, do a ton of research. I would probably try to find a handful of people on LinkedIn that did the boot camp you're thinking about and reach out to them and ask them if it was worth the money and worth the time. That's usually a pretty good signal. The reason I did the boot camp was because I wanted the name weight on my resume of like University of California, San Diego, machine learning engineering. If I could do it all over again, I'm not sure if I would. It was very expensive, and I don't know how much I really gained from it, but I ended up where I ended up, and so I don't have any like regrets towards it. But if you are thinking about doing the boot camp route, just keep in mind that they're a little dicey sometimes. So just do your homework. They prey specifically on like course creation and boot camps especially. They prey on people who are vulnerable to spending 20 grand on like a better life, right? Like if you think about, hey, I hate my job, or I'm confused and I need like a better path, and someone's like, give me 20 grand and I'll get you a job in tech with like great work-life balance and job security and a ton of money. Like people are going to pay for that whether or not they actually end up getting the thing. So just keep that in mind, because they're also kind of a like big commitment. Like a lot of them are like 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. So you're probably going to have to like leave whatever employment you have if you are working. So they're not always bad, but just keep that in mind when you're considering. So self-taught is the next one we're going to go to. This one is free 99, baby. $0.00. But that said, this can be a very depressing and frustrating path to take, because unlike the computer science degree or the boot camp, this has no roadmap for you. There's no like modules or syllabus to follow. This is just you, vibes, and YouTube, which is fine. A lot of great engineers come from this, but you just have to know that going in and be like, okay, I need to like sit down, figure out, what is it that I'm trying to learn, and not get trapped in what people call it tutorial hell, is a very common term referring to self-taught engineering or any sort of self-taught thing to do on a computer, where you just watch tutorials, recreate what they're doing in the tutorial, and then never learn anything. This is double right now, because with AI being able to, you spin up Claude Code or 5.3 Codex and just ask it to make you your thing, and then it makes it and it works, and then you put it on your resume. But it's like, I have no idea how this thing actually works. That's not really where you want to end up either. If I had any advice, if you want to go for the self-taught route, my advice would be this is also like the most classic computer science advice or programming advice ever, so I definitely don't think this is like something that I just came up with, but the tried and true is you do the NEET code, NEET code, which I'm sure you've all heard of. You do the NEET code roadmap, which is going to teach you like, this is how to code, this is how system design works, this is how algorithms work. So it's mostly tailored towards interviews and things like that. But it's great. It has like code along modules, really great teaching. That guy's super smart. So I would say you go NEET code, and then you go, let's see if I can write this, designing data intensive apps. So this is a really famous book. It's called Designing Data Intensive Applications. I think if you do NEET code and you read Designing Data Intensive Apps, that's all you need. I think you're good to go from there. I think you can check your box of like, all my learning is done for right now. Not to mean like you're just never going to learn anything else again, but I think that's plenty to get you started. You could probably knock that out in a month or two of like consistent work, and it wouldn't require you to quit your job or anything. If I could start all over, this is what I would do. But that's not to say that all the time I spent floundering around on YouTube and various like learn to code websites didn't teach me a lot, because it did. But obviously, this is probably the most efficient way to get yourself where you need to be. I think that covers everything for step one, which is learn to code. The next thing we're going to talk about is projects. So now you're probably thinking, okay, so I learned to code. What do I do now? So projects, this is probably the most fun part of the whole process, because this is where you can kind of just do whatever you want. The learning to code part sucks because you have to like learn you're like learning the vocabulary of a new language basically. But that's why I said if you can get yourself through neat code and get yourself through data intensive apps, that's enough to get you to start building. Building is where you want to spend like literally 90% of your time, because anything that you cram in, like you're learning, like you're studying for a test in college, you're going to forget. Like I have crammed so much system design and algorithms information for interviews, and for just like when I was learning to code, I learned all these like syntax rules about different like Python imports. I have forgotten all of it because I don't use it anymore. There's no reason for my brain to think that that's like important information. When you're building projects though, you'll learn what you actually need to succeed on the job, and you'll remember the methods, the techniques, the things that the tricks and tips that will actually make you a better engineer. So I think you want to spend as much time building as you can, and ideally this is not from YouTube, and this is not AI. So you don't want to just follow tutorials on YouTube, and you don't want to just build with AI. Like if you have an idea for a project and you're like, oh man, like you just tell Claude Code like, yo, make me this like weather forecaster app that predicts like when major weather events are going to happen or something. It will do it for you. It can write like tens of thousands of lines of code and make that for you, and you will be none the wiser afterwards because you haven't learned anything. I'm obviously an AI engineer, and I'm definitely not anti-AI for writing code, but for learning to code, it can be used as a tool to like explain stuff to you, but for just like generating code for the purposes of building projects, it's just redundant. Like you're kind of just wasting your own time at that point. So I would say YouTube's a cool place to like see what people are building, watch some videos, what people make, and like follow along as best you can, but you don't need to follow like line of code by line of code and then just like run their code to see what it does. You're gonna 10x your learning rate by just doing the hard part, which is like building stuff on your own. So what I would recommend is maybe what I do, at least at my job, and what I've done for a while, is I kind of have two editors going. I have one that I have like Cursor going with AI integration, and then I'll have like just a regular VS Code, no AI integration, no autocomplete. And I kind of spend different amounts of times in different ones depending on what I'm working on. So, but at least when you're first learning, I think as much as you can, you want to stay away from tutorials and stay away from AI, because you're just going to end up wasting your own time. But that's a good point. In terms of building projects, you're going to need a code editor. And with all of these code editors offering AI integration, I would just make sure to choose one. There's a million out there. The most common one is Visual Studio Code. There's also like Colaboratory, which is a Google offering that's free, which is just Jupyter Notebooks. Last time I checked, they didn't have full like AI integration. That could be a really good place. I think Notebooks is a great place to learn in general, because there's two kinds of files. This is referring directly to Python. Bear with me if you're watching this wanting to learn how to work in C or something, or data engineering, but in Python there's .py files and there's .ipy notebook files. So these files are really cool for learning. Play around with them if you're watching this for the first time and don't know what a Jupyter Notebook is. It's just a Google away if you're not familiar, because you basically run your code like cell by cell instead of like in a Python notebook you write a ton of code and then you run the whole notebook or run the whole file, and then in a Jupyter Notebook you get to run like each line of code individually and see what it does. So it's great for learning. And then honestly, a lot of professional companies, including ones that I've worked at, use Jupyter Notebooks in production. So last but not least, we've talked about, don't use YouTube, don't use AI, use this, use that. But it's like, what do I even build is a great question. And I would say this is your time to have some fun. Lean on what your interests are. Like, I'm a huge soccer fan, so maybe I would build like some sort of chatbot that could interact with historical soccer data and could answer questions about how players are doing in the Premier League. So that on my resume says, hey, I implemented a retrieval and augmented generation approach to pull historical data from the Premier League and updates with live results from fixtures and things like that. Like, it's really awesome for your resume, and that sounds like a blast. It honestly sounds like a great weekend. But don't go for the most like meta or efficient like buzzword project, because what they're looking for in the interview, which I'll talk a little bit more about in the interview section, is to gauge, like, if you are like lighting up while you're talking about this project that you worked on and you know the ins and outs of it because it's something that's interesting to you, that's a lot more impressive than just like, yeah, I made the 10,000th rendition of the Twitter sentiment bot that like predicts stock prices based on how people are talking on Twitter. So I would say lean on your hobbies, lean on what's interesting to you. Like, obviously I made a quantitative finance course. That doesn't have anything to do with AI. That's more just traditional machine learning, but I love finance. I have an economics degree. I think that stuff's so fascinating. There's a ton of really cool stuff you could do with like deep space data, like telescope data, things like that. There's like image classification, different prediction algorithms you can work with. And yeah, just, I mean, the world is yours at that point. This is why we're learning to code, is to build like whatever you want to build. So lean on what's interesting to you. Don't go for like a common Kaggle, like this is the thing that everybody builds, so I'm going to build it. Just be yourself there. Build what sounds fun to you. You can always ask ChatGPT or Claude for the classic, like, hey, I'm trying to become an AI engineer and I like football. What can I build? I think there's a ton of if you're into music, I think it'd be really cool. If you're into music and want to be an AI engineer, you could build like a plugin for like a music studio tool like Ableton or Logic that like lets you in natural language like make a certain tone, or like you could add some reverb or chorus or an ethereal sound to it just in natural language. Like, that's probably pretty hard. So I think audio programming's in C. That might be harder than I'm making it sound, but stuff like that, like just get your brain going, whatever you're interested in. Okay, so now we've talked about projects and learning to code. Next thing we're going to talk about is the resume. Okay, so I know how to code. I've built some cool projects. What should I do with my resume? How do I get my resume picked for an interview? This is tricky because there really isn't a perfect resume. I think the best thing you can do here is just keep it simple. One page, you go on Google, you type in like Harvard resume template, or Princeton resume template. I think there's a subreddit even for like resume optimization that has some pretty good stuff. I think I'm actually 100% sure I pulled my resume template from Reddit. But it's just simple. Like, these templates work. You just pull the template down, you fill it in with your information, and you keep your bullet points simple. Don't try to put like crazy buzzwords and really complicated jargon all throughout your resume because it aligns with the job description or something, your resume should be readable to a non-technical recruiter, because a lot of times they're the ones that see your resume first and pass it along to the people who might understand the crazy tech jargon that you're going to put in there. And I know it's really exciting to like put a bunch of like stuff that you now kind of comprehend on there, but just keep it simple. Like the difference between saying like you built a super complicated neural network that learned how to play Pong against itself versus just saying like made an ML bot to play video games with itself. Like just dumb down whatever you're going to put on there a little bit. Make it readable. And then the biggest thing with the resume, though, if you take anything away from this section, is whatever you put on the resume, be ready to talk about, because that is what the first few interviews are likely going to be, is just talking about your resume. They're going to ask you, like, okay, it says here that you built a URL shortener and you built it with some, like, Azure dependencies and whatnot. And they're going to say, okay, tell me about this. And then they're just going to keep asking questions until you get to a point where you can't answer them. So that's, like, why you never put anything on your resume that you're not, like, 100% ready to talk about. Because it's just, those are the things you're going to spend the interview talking about. So you're just kind of setting yourself up for failure by putting something on your resume that you didn't actually do, or you're kind of incorporating work that someone else did into your own bullet points. You're just setting yourself up for failure. Even if that thing is the thing that gets you in the door, you're setting yourself up for just like a really uncomfortable interview process. So even if like there's a library in Python that you've worked with like 3 times and you like kind of understand, and you put that on your resume, like I got burned for that one time. I think I put like PyTorch on my resume like right when I was learning, and I got like bombarded with questions about PyTorch, and all I had ever done was like followed a YouTube tutorial about like how to build like a really basic model with it. And yeah, it like ruined the whole interview. So be honest about what's on your resume. You can always like embellish a little bit if it's something that you're like a true subject matter expert in. You can like exaggerate a little bit, but like it should be grounded in the truth. Like, don't put anything on there that's like actually untrue or outside of the scope of what your knowledge is, because like getting yourself in the door but like not being able to back it up with like what you actually did is just setting yourself up for failure. So if you take anything away from my resume advice, it's honesty, because this goes so far in the interview process. Because if you're in the interview, you have a bunch of stuff on your resume, and we start talking and it becomes quickly apparent that you don't actually do all these things, that is not going to do well for your interview candidacy. In terms of tips, though, I would say don't get caught in the loop of like over optimizing your resume and trying to change it for every job and trying to make it look like the best resume that you see online. Or your resume doesn't matter that much. I've seen people get hired for very high paying jobs with very ugly resumes. It's just the thing that gets you in the door. You get yourself the job. The resume is just like, this is what I've worked on, this is what I'd like to talk about in the interview, basically. So I wouldn't lose a ton of sleep by your resume. You're just going to put like education, what you've worked on, maybe some projects you've built, core competencies, and there's tons of templates to follow. Just keep it simple. Keep your bullet points readable. If it reads like AI generated all of it, it's not going to bode well. Like, people can tell that AI wrote your whole resume. Even if you ask AI, don't make this sound like AI. It still reads like AI. So, all right, where are we? We've learned to code. We've built some projects. We've made a resume. The next part is the job search. This is probably the most important part. I guess to start off the job search part, I'm going to draw a big frowny face. There's my frowny face. See how sad he is? He is sad because job searching sucks. Job searching is very difficult. It is one of the most dehumanizing and just like brutal things you can go through as like a human being. Know that going in, because if you're looking at a job, and let's say a job has 10,000 people have applied to it, you are one person. The math here means you have like a 0.001% chance of getting said job. But the good news is you could probably take about half of these. That is 5,000. Still not great, but you could take half of them off the table when you see those jobs that see like on LinkedIn that have like 10,000 applications, because most of those are bots that have literally nothing to do with the job. People are just mass applying these days. So don't be discouraged by the quantity of people who have applied, but just know that you are essentially buying a lottery ticket here. These types of jobs that have 1 million applications, very difficult to get your resume seen. So I say that job searching sucks because obviously it does, but more so because like you're putting if you think about it like psychologically for a second, you're putting yourself out there. You're asking someone to basically deem you as good enough to be paid for what you have chosen as your profession. It's a very depressing and dehumanizing process because you're going to get rejected by, 20 times the jobs that you end up hearing back from or receiving offers from. And that's just not a good feeling. Like, I remember job searching and just being miserable with myself, feeling like I wasn't good enough, feeling like I had imposter syndrome, that I was never going to find a job, that I was never going to have a career. And that's just part of going into this that you have to understand. And if you can understand that going in, you will be much happier throughout the process, because I got super lucky when I was job searching that I had a bunch of interviews right away, just through like connections of friends who were able to reach out to hiring managers for me. But I got denied from like all of those companies because I wasn't prepared to be interviewing at those companies yet, because I hadn't kind of gone through this process before. And it was humiliating. Like, I remember just feeling like I was never going to find a job. So if you can go into your job search knowing like, a lot of these jobs have thousands of applications, and even if there's 100 people who are perfectly qualified, that's still a lottery ticket. This is going to be hard. It's going to hurt my feelings. It's going to be dehumanizing at times. You'll be a lot happier because when those rejections come, you won't be as like blindsided by them. Because what you don't want to do is see job. This is at least the path that most people fall into, including myself. See job. 2, imagine. Start imagining, man, what would my life be like if I got that job? How awesome would it be to make all that money and to work at that company and to have those benefits and to work on that problem? And then you start to feel like this is your life. This starts to equal life. And then 3, rejection. Now you're grieving the life that you never had. It's terrible. So when you're going through your job search, if you can go into it knowing this and not get caught up imagining yourself in this job, you're going to be much happier. So now I can move on to the actual practical job searching tips, but I think that thing I just talked about is the most important job searching tip. You have the first option is your quick applies. Second option is your job boards. And your third option is reaching out directly. So you're going to want to do all three of these things in parallel. So here's what I mean by that. Quick applying gets a bad rep. People say it's stupid and you shouldn't do it. I got my job from a quick apply. I don't think it hurts to buy a lottery ticket, honestly. I think those jobs do get mass applied to just because you literally just have to click a button to throw your resume in, but you can't win the lottery if you don't buy a ticket, is how I feel about that. I would say download LinkedIn or Indeed or whatever you want to use and upload your resume onto it and upload a cover letter onto it. And just when you're scrolling on your phone, instead of going on TikTok or YouTube or whatever you like, just click through some quick applies. You never know. I don't think that's terrible. It shouldn't be the bulk of your your job searching strategy for sure, because you will definitely not hear back from 99.99999% of the places you quick apply to, but it's still worth doing, I think personally. But job boards and reaching out, these kind of also work for each other. You're going to want to target jobs that have just been posted on these job boards that you're actually qualified for and then are in your area or remote, whatever you're looking for. So you're going to try to pick a few jobs and make those like your target jobs for the day. I recommend working this like it's your actual job if you don't have a job, if you're like fully job searching. And then if you're working on the side or you already have a full-time job, still kind of be the flow that you work on. Is like open up LinkedIn, ZipRecruiter, or whatever first thing, and then find your like 4 or 5 jobs that you're like actually interested in. Go to the company website. So we're going to leave the job board. We're going to go to the company's website, and then you're going to apply there. Apply on the company website, and then pick like 4 or 5 people, and you're going to reach out to them on LinkedIn or whatever. Probably LinkedIn's the most obvious choice, because there's tools that you can use to like email people. There's like recruiter tools that I think you can use to like get people's emails, like their work emails, and you can email them. I don't really recommend that because it's kind of like an invasion of privacy, it feels like a little bit. I think if you're going to take that approach, I would reach out to talent acquisition only. I would reach out to recruiters and talent acquisition people, because if you're just emailing some like random engineer, they're going to be weirded out and not as likely to help you. I mean, not to say that they won't. I'm just saying you're going to have a lot more luck reaching out to people that are already in talent acquisition, because you're essentially helping them with their job and they don't care that you're emailing them quite as much. I don't want to speak for everyone in talent acquisition, but in my personal experience, I emailed some people using a tool that you can use to get people's emails, and the recruiters I talked to were perfectly happy to talk to me. But I never heard back if I reached out to like somebody like that just like worked at the company. That's what places like LinkedIn are for. Like you want to reach out to somebody on there. And I know it is hard because people who like have jobs on LinkedIn get kind of bombarded with messages. So I would stick to like 4 or 5 people. You don't need to reach out too much, and just expect to hear back from like 1 out of every 10 to 20. Most people aren't really on LinkedIn unless they're job searching. So, but the thing is, what do I say when I'm reaching out to somebody? So that's a good question. You don't want to beat around the bush. Like, we all know why you're messaging me or why I'm messaging you. I want either a referral or a hiring manager. So what you want to do here in my opinion, is just be honest and kind and just be like, hey man, or hey, like, here's my resume, here's my portfolio. Would you consider referring me for this role, or would you consider putting me in contact with somebody who's in charge of this role or something like that? I don't think it's a great use of your time to be like, can we, like, I get messages that are like, can we get on a call and talk about like company values and stuff? And it's like, that's great, but, you're trying to build a connection with somebody organically is cool, but I still would recommend just like, don't beat around the bush. Reach out to somebody and ask them for the referral or to talk to the hiring manager. I've also found that referrals, they don't really matter that much. That's my personal opinion, at least. I've never heard back from a referral, but if somebody will talk to a hiring manager for you, this is very good. This like pretty much guarantees you an interview. So yeah, lean heavily on your connections. If you have a friend that works at a company that you want to work at and they'll reach out to a hiring manager for you, that's like a guaranteed interview. If you have a friend, don't ask them for a referral. The referral isn't really going to do that much for you. It like puts your resume like a little bit higher. But if they're going to refer you, they should reach out to the hiring manager anyway, because you can lean on the fact that people get a bunch of money usually for you getting hired if you refer them to the hiring manager, or they do the referral inside their whatever software they use. So there's usually like a multi-$1,000 bonus that people get for referring someone. So you can lean on that a little bit, but if you are going to go the connections route, focus heavily on the hiring manager. So in summary, for job searching, I would say you're going to want to spam, quick apply when you're bored. Spam, quick apply. Target a few jobs a day. And target a few high quality jobs a day. This pen sucks. High quality jobs. And then reach out to people based on these jobs. So pick a few jobs, reach out to a handful of people at each one, the high quality ones that like you actually align with. And this should get you at least to the interview pretty quickly. I mean, you just got to get yourself out there, and people want to help. As much as it feels like people don't want to help, it feels good to help. People want to be able to be a part of your journey and get you to your goal. So just be kind, be honest, and don't beat around the bush when you're asking people for a referral. Okay, so we've learned how to code. We've built projects. We've made a resume. We've done the job search. Now we're at the interview part. The interview part I'm going to keep pretty simple. What you don't want to do is like grind interview prep. So grinding is a no-no, because if you just like try to treat these interviews like a test, you're going to come off as kind of inauthentic. What you want to be in these interviews is authentic. Because, and this is like such corny advice, but being yourself, being honest, being kind, being authentic in the interview, I think is one of the most important things you can do, because the person that's hiring you is also a human being. The person that you're sitting across the table from wants, you're going to work with them every day probably. So even if you like robotically know all the answers to the test of the interview questions, if you you're going to get outclassed by the person that comes in and is honest and kind and smiles and wants to contribute meaningfully and maybe doesn't know everything. Which probably actually brings me to my most important point. This is your interview superpower. It's called I don't know. So, in an interview, especially for programming, data science, whatever it is, they are going to push you until you say this magic phrase. Because what they're looking for is if you have enough humility to admit when you don't know the answer to a problem. So, say you're asked a question that you don't know the answer to. You kind of have two options. You can or actually three options. You can guess based on like what you context clues and like what you understand about the conversation. You can stall and steer it back towards something that you do know the answer to, or you can say I don't know. So I'm going to talk about the results of each one of those. If you try to take the path where you guess, like it's always obvious when you don't actually know the answer. And it's fine to not know the answer. So that's just not going to go well for you. If you try to steer the conversation back to something you know about, that also signals that you don't know the answer, but you aren't humble or have the humility to just say, I don't know the answer to this. What happens when you say, I don't know, is everybody says, oh, okay, that's fine. Because it is fine. There's so much information out there. Like, every job wants you to know everything about anything. It's okay to not know. Most of the time, you're looking to hire the mindset and teach them the business. So, being able to say, I don't know, in an interview is going to set you apart from pretty much like all of the candidates. You'd be surprised. I think if you can focus on being on time, smiling, being kind, humble, and being able to say you don't know the answer to something, you are 90% of the way there. The remaining 10% is a combination of skill, luck, and it's just skill and luck, actually. It's literally just skill in the context of like you know the answers to the questions that they have for you, and luck in the context that the person that you're interviewing with is also genuine, humble, and wants to see you succeed and isn't trying to just make you feel stupid, because you will do those interviews as well. And the luck also being that the conversation steers towards things that you're more fluent in because of the scope of engineering these days. It's impossible to learn everything in preparation for an interview. So I think my last note on interviews is do a little bit of research beforehand. I know that seems obvious too, but if you can do a little bit of homework beforehand and know a bit about what the company does, you don't need to be like an expert in everything the company does. You're going to set yourself apart from a lot of candidates, because if they don't ask like a question about like, do you know what the company does? If you can ask a question at the end of the interview about something related to the company, it just shows that you're like the person that shows up prepared, honest, kind, and humble is like, for any job, this goes like across the board, going to succeed more so than the candidate that like robotically knows the answers to all of these like really complicated edge cases. I should probably talk about LEET code in this context as well. That's pretty important. LEET code and system design. So I'm going to be honest. When I was interviewing, I did 30 plus interviews. I never touched either of these. Never came up. Actually, I did one system design interview. But other than that, never came up. And I grinded LEET code. I grinded system design. I could design Twitter with my eyes closed on a whiteboard. Never came up. What did come up was the points on my resume, what I was interested in working in, and how I work in a team. That's not to say that these won't come up. What I would strongly recommend if you are embarking on this journey, get a general understanding of these two concepts. This is leet code equals the neat code thing I was talking about. And system design is designing data intensive apps plus neat code. Those will give you enough of an understanding of these things to be able to talk about them. And then if you start getting into a pipeline at a company like a Google or a company that's going to press you about these topics, then you can grind them. But I would say it's not a great use of your time right away. Like, unless you know that you're going to be tested on them, you're going to just kind of make yourself miserable for no reason. Okay. All right, last but not least, let's say you get the job. You've learned to code, you've built a couple projects, you made your resume, you did the job search, you've interviewed around. Now you actually have the job. Let's talk about what it means to succeed in that role. So let's say you want to succeed as an engineer. The first thing is basically kind of going off the point I just talked about saying, I don't know. It's don't be afraid. Be dumb. Be a dummy. It's okay. It's okay to be a dummy. I'm a dummy all the time. Don't be afraid to be a dummy and ask questions. You now at your disposal have a wealth of information around you. You have tons of people, engineers whose experiences like 100x yours, and they are just wealth of information. You can ask them questions, set up meetings, but at the same time, in parallel to this, be a self-starter. Come prepared with questions if you're going to meet with somebody. Don't ask people to just like feed you things. Get ready to learn on your own, watch YouTube. I mean, if you've made it this far, you know how to learn. But just remember that succeeding in a role requires you to be a self-starter, because people that you work with will do their best to help you, but they also have jobs. So knowing that, like, take it upon yourself to like learn as best you can, and then use people around you as resources to answer questions, not to be like, hey, can you explain to me how everything works here? It's like, okay, I learned a lot about this like pipeline. I was a little confused about like this YAML file that's here. I don't know what any of this is pointing to. Can we like go over this a little bit? Like that's going to be great. Next, you'll probably at this point, I mean, I'm sure, again, if you've made it this far, have a ton of access to AI integrated coding tools. So the thing that you need to focus on is don't de-skill yourself. I'll put a link in the description to an article about digital de-skilling, but this basically means if you figure out that you can use AI to write all your code for you and you start doing that, this is the dumber chart. This is my chart. So this is dumb on the side. This is time on the bottom. This is you. As time goes on, you are going to get dumber because you aren't doing your job anymore, right? Like you don't have a job anymore. You are asking in natural language an AI to write all your code for you. This is not great because it's definitely a situation where with great power comes great responsibility. And if you're using AI to write all your code for you, yes, your paychecks will still be the same number, but in the long term, you are going to be dumber and less hireable. So rely on AI coding tools responsibly. The best way, in my opinion, to use an AI integrated coding tool or using AI to generate code works like this. So first, understand problem. What am I trying to solve here? what is the problem that we are trying to solve? How do we solve said problem? What is the approach that we're taking? So you're going to do a system, or you're going to do a, I shouldn't say system here. Oops. You're going to do a design review. This is where you're going to come up with your approach to solving this problem, and you're going to talk to the other people that you work with and say, this is my plan, this is my approach. What do you guys think? You can iterate a little bit here if people have ideas. Third thing you're going to do, write some pseudocode. Pseudocode means code that isn't syntax perfect. It's just like you writing like the logic of what the code's going to do. Now you can use AI first pass. So you can open up an agent and say, here's my pseudocode, here's my design, this is what I'm trying to do. Can you like make my pseudocode production code? Like you make this like actual code. And then from there, you are going to read the code. Read what the AI writes. Read, make changes, and iterate. Iterate/test. So this is personally what I do. What does this say? Read, make changes. My handwriting is so atrocious sometimes. You're going to understand the problem, do a design review, write some pseudocode, then you can let AI run a first pass. Then it's read what the AI wrote, make changes yourself if they need to be. Sometimes you don't need to make changes at all. Sometimes it does it perfectly. And then you're going to iterate and test from there. This will allow you to understand the problem, understand the edge cases, be able to explain how your system works, and be able to understand the code that the AI wrote the same as if you'd wrote it yourself. But this process can be like 50 times faster. So this can be a great tool, but you don't want to get caught up. What is going on? Select all. You don't want to get caught up skipping all those steps and just letting AI write all your code, because like I said, in the long term, you just become dumber and unhireable. And the only people that really benefit from that are like the people who are in charge of you. Like, I guess they don't necessarily care if you're the one writing the code, but it is long term not great for your career to be kind of just generating your code. And then last but not least, I think to sum it all up, like kind of what I've talked about in this whole video, is be kind. Be kind to the people you work with, and be adaptable. If you can do those two things, show up with a smile, you're going to be 10x engineer in no time. Because if you're working hard, you're honest, you're kind, you're adaptable, you're using code AI tools responsibly, you're being yourself, you've made it this far, I think you're going to crush it in your career. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate it. If you have any questions, please leave them below. I'll do my best to answer them. Like I said, a lot of this is just my opinion, but if you are thinking about a career in computer science, data science, any of these things, know that I believe in you, you should believe in you, and that you can do it. All right. Thank you.